telecommunications, what do? They challenge the norm. They say, we are going to do it differently. We're going to shake up the system and we're going to create something completely different. What does Richard Branson do? He looks at a world record and he says, I'm going to break it. He says, oh, no one's gone to the moon yet and started making trips to the moon. I'm going to set up Virgin Intergalactic, and away he goes. But he also does a lot around the cause and the why. If any of you want to look up Virgin Unite, it's a fantastic brand that he's created, or an organisation he's created that helps people in Africa and around the world that are less fortunate than ours, and brings people around to actually work together and make a big difference. So really, Richard Branson's values are similar to what Virgin does as well. And the way they do it as well in terms of pushing it is they love using PR. And that's one of the best ways to market yourself. Once you have that why, once you have something that's actually really measurable that people want to hear about, you can really share that across public relations and PR through social media, and no one does it better than Branson and obviously the Virgin Empire. So what makes up a good brand? Well, a lot of people think, and when I've been doing branding and talking about branding for a while, they say to me, oh, well, brand is just basically a logo. But I think we've all started to realise now that the word brand is far, far more than what a logo is all about. So these are the elements that make up a brand. So the first thing you see on there is a brand promise. Now, a brand promise is what I also call a USP, or a tagline. So we all know Nike, just do it, very, very powerful. So it could be something that motivates you to do something. So I challenge you, I suppose, over these next couple of days to think about if you could put a tagline about what you do that's different and better than everybody else. Try and come up with that tagline. You start wide and you gradually come down to a single sentence that sums up why you're different to everybody else in your field or expertise. It can be measurable. So we look at FedEx, for example, absolutely, positively overnight. So if you wanted a parcel delivered and it had to be somewhere tomorrow, do you think that FedEx kind of tagline would mean something to you? Absolutely, positively overnight means nothing that it can get there 2 days later or whatever. The next thing is obviously brand identity. So this is the logo. So that's just one element of the whole brand. So your logo should be as familiar to people in terms of colours. You need to own a colour, you need to own a symbol, you need to own a word. So if it's your personal brand, obviously that's easy, it's your name, but your company brand also has to be that easily recognisable as you in the marketplace. If we think of McDonald's and the Golden Arches, we don't even need to see the word McDonald's anymore. We see the Golden Arches and we know straight away that's where the McDonald's is. So that's your brand identity. The next thing, and we heard about this morning when for our speakers, I thought the common thread from our great speakers this morning was the word strategy. So brand strategy is really having a particular method or map of how you're going to deliver your brand. It's not good enough just to be able to go out there and say, well, this is me, this is my why, if you don't have a strategy for how you're actually going to take that brand to market. So ask yourself, what is the brand strategy? What do I want to accomplish in 2015 with my brand? The next one is brand positioning, and it's all about where you fit in the market in relation to your competitors. So I don't know how much you really look at your competition. A lot of us tend to just think of ourselves as unique and going forward, but have a look at where your competitors are. It's a very interesting thing. Have a look at some of these elements of what they're pushing out are. What's their brand promise? Do they have one? A lot of times you can come up with a brand promise they don't have because they just don't have one. So think about what your brand promise is. And then, of course, brand management. Once you've got all those together, there's nothing worse than seeing a brand appear cheaply on something and not. So if you're a quality brand, don't go out and put a cheap iPhone video on YouTube and share it, because obviously you've lost the quality. So whatever your brand image is and all those other elements I've just talked about, make sure that you keep the consistency there. Think of Coca-Cola, for example, that certain colour red. And again, I'd challenge you to think of a colour, because colour is such a subliminal, meaningful kind of thing. I'm just thinking of Sharon, because we talk about personal branding and colours in a lot of stuff that you talk about. But think if you could own a colour. I think it's just so good. Scott had the yellow on, which, I think that's his brand colour. If you've got a particular colour, try and own that colour so people identify you as a colour. But make sure that colour is a PMS colour that is represented everywhere. Don't get some other form of yellow or a dirty orange and think that that's the same. If you go with Coca-Cola around the world, do you see Coca-Cola in any other type of red as you see the Coca-Cola red? They own that red PMS colour, which is Coca-Cola. So let's just take a look at marketing. Once we've, say, got all that together, we've decided what our brand is going to be, what our personal brand, how it's going to align with our actual corporate brand, and we've got the essence together, we know what our why is, we've got our tagline together. The biggest hurdle now is how do we take it to market? We live in this wonderful digital marketplace. Now, this guy on the screen now, this is how marketing used to be. Not that long ago, if we look back pre-internet days or whatever, didn't it used to be easy where if you wanted to get a booking, the phone would ring. If you wanted to speak to somebody, you picked up the phone and you rang them. Now we hardly use the telephone because there's so many other devices. So the reason it was simple is that's how the landscape looked back not that long ago, where all you had to do to market yourself was spend a fair bit of dollar on advertising. And the rest of it was a little bit of PR that you might do here and there, field work where you might go a bit of door knocking or do a bit of networking and that kind of stuff, and then maybe retail, you might actually do an expo or actually get out in front of people that are relevant to your particular brand. That was how simple thing was, that used to be. And then as we got into the digital age, things sort of started to turn a little bit ugly. So this is marketing now in 2015, and he kind of feels how a lot of you do probably when you think, okay, I've got a great brand, how do I actually market this? How do I build my business? And the reason you feel like that, and he feels like that, is because the landscape looks like this. So the question is, where do you start? And even if you know where to start, where do you finish? And a lot of businesses today, small businesses, micro businesses, individuals trying to build our own brands, we try to do everything. If it's social media, we try to be on everything to do with social media, where we should just be focusing on the one that's relevant to us. So I'm going to show you today how we can really fine in and hone in on a particular area of that massive map that will actually make the biggest effect on building our brand. And the reason why we do that is because the world has completely changed. We now rely a lot on our mobile devices. We live, and we all know, in the mobile world. As you saw, the reason I had that mobile phone before was because the mobile phone is coming back. I mean, this is the biggest connection that we have, and it's only going to get bigger and bigger. 80% of emails are now read on a mobile device. 122 billion emails are sent every hour of the day around the world. And you wonder why your email sometimes doesn't get through to the person you're sending it to and ends up in the junk mail filter. Because we have to. Stats say that up to 30,000 messages a day we are hit by, whether it be a logo somewhere, a signpost or wherever. So our brains have to turn off from a lot of this communication. So we use things like junk mail filters to put things into junk mail. But you imagine if you're still today, and a lot of people are, sending out newsletters that are worded and long form, the old traditional newsletters, and you're wondering why people aren't opening them, this is the stat you need to look at. 80% of people are looking at that newsletter on an email. You try reading lots and lots of words on an actual mobile phone. So we've all become censors of our own communication. We're switching off by the droves. If we have a look at this is from Forrester Research. The average time spent on a homepage is just 59 seconds. I'll give you another scary stat. Up to 90% of people that go on a website are not looking to buy or not ready to buy. And yet, how many websites do you go to where it's buy now, download the trial, book me, all this kind of stuff, all on the homepage? So you've got 59 seconds to get them off the homepage with something meaningful, and yet you're selling to them and getting them to come straight to an offer when they're not ready to buy. Only 10% of those people are actually going to be relevant in terms of actually wanting to buy from you here and now. And finally, just another stat just to set the scene again, 70 to 90% of the buying journey is completed before engaging a vendor. In fact, 85% in the next few years will be done before they even talk to a human being. So if you're not putting good content out there on the net and actually getting your brand really found easily on the internet and people can find you through SEO, then you're in serious trouble. If I go back to that mobile device I was just talking to you about and that stat, I don't know if you all know, but if you're performing well on search at the moment and people are being able to find you, Google, in the lovely world that they live in, have decided to bring out a new algorithm on the 21st of April. If you don't have a responsive website, a mobile-friendly website, you will go down. And so if you haven't got a mobile site, that's another thing you need to be looking at straight away is have a look at your brand. If you do have a website now, check what it looks like when you go onto a mobile device. And finally, 74% of online consumers get frustrated with websites when content appears to have nothing to do. Is that true or not? Do you Google search and get frustrated with some rubbish that was not part of your search? Yes or no? Exactly, and 74% of people agree with you because that's what it is. So, in a nutshell, the old marketing playbook is broken. So we need something new. Good news is you're in the right room to find out what that thing is that's new.